The oncologist's words hit me like a sword, piercing straight through the fragile shield of hope I'd been holding onto for months. Mrs. Patterson, I don't understand. Why isn't Emma responding to treatment? Dr. Harrison studied the computer screen in the small, sterile consultation room, tapping the edge of his glasses against his thumb as he reviewed my 7-year-old daughter's latest blood work. Her cancer markers are getting worse, not better, he continued, each word cutting deeper. According to these tests, there isn't enough chemotherapy in her bloodstream. It's almost as if she hasn't been receiving her medication. I froze. My hands gripped the edge of the vinyl chair so hard my knuckles turned white. I felt the room tilt. That's impossible, I whispered, my voice trembling. I never missed a single dose. I watch her swallow it every single night. I log it in my notebook. I swear to you, Dr. Harrison, I give it to her myself. At that exact second, my phone vibrated in my purse. I pulled it out automatically, my mind racing, trying to process the doctor's words. It was a text message from my younger sister, Caroline. The screen lit up with a photo of her teacup poodle, Princess. Underneath the picture, Caroline had texted, "Princess is finally getting stronger." I was about to close the message when my eyes caught something in the background of the photo. Sitting on Caroline's kitchen counter was a white paper bag with a distinctive blue and green logo. It was from the specialty oncology pharmacy downtown, the exact, highly restricted pharmacy where Emma's life-saving oral chemotherapy was dispensed. That was the moment I realized someone wasn't stealing money. They were stealing my daughter's chance to live. I stared at that photo on my phone screen, a cold dread washing over me. But there was no time to process it because the door to the consultation room opened and my sweet 7-year-old Emma walked back in, holding the hand of a clinic nurse. Emma was wearing a bright yellow knitted hat with unicorn ears on it. She loved that hat. She wore it because the intense chemotherapy had taken every single strand of her beautiful blonde hair. She looked so small, her skin pale and translucent, but her smile was still as bright as the sun. She looked at my face, immediately seeing the tears I was trying so hard to blink away. Instead of me comforting her, my brave little girl reached out and patted my knee. "Mom, when my hair grows back, can we go to Disney?" she asked, her voice a tiny, fragile chirp. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced the biggest smile I could muster. "Yes, sweetheart. We will go to Disney, and we will ride every single ride. I promise." She leaned her head against my arm. "Did I do something wrong, Mom? Am I getting better?" "You did nothing wrong, my angel," I lied through my tears, stroking her cheek. "You are being so brave, and you are getting better every single day." But as I hugged her small, fragile body, my eyes went back to that text message. A dark, terrifying suspicion began to take root in my mind. To understand why I even suspected my own family, you have to understand the dynamic I grew up in. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, had always favored Caroline. Caroline was the golden child who could do no wrong. When she grew up, she didn't have children. Instead, she bought Princess, a pedigree teacup poodle. Caroline treated that dog like royalty. Princess wore designer clothes, had lavish birthday parties that cost thousands of dollars, and was taken to a luxury canine grooming spa every single week. My parents enabled all of it, treating Princess like their actual human grandchild. Then, 3 months ago, 2 tragedies struck our family at the same time. Emma was diagnosed with aggressive leukemia. A week later, Caroline's poodle, Princess, was diagnosed with canine lymphoma. While I was drowning in medical bills, trying to figure out how to pay for Emma's treatments, Caroline was hysterical about the cost of canine oncology. She manipulated our parents, crying that she couldn't afford the specialized care. My parents immediately offered to help her, but I didn't know how far that help went. Not until now. As we prepared to leave the clinic, Dr. Harrison called me back to his desk. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm ordering an urgent, comprehensive toxicology and pharmacy audit. We need to verify the exact chemical composition of the medication you've been giving her. Something is terribly wrong here. I nodded, my mind spinning. I walked out to the car, buckled Emma into her seat, and sat in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel. How could the medication be wrong? It came straight from the specialty pharmacy. And then a memory hit me like a physical blow. Every single month since Emma started treatment, my parents had insisted on collecting Emma's medication from the specialty pharmacy downtown. They always volunteered. They told me they wanted to take the burden off my shoulders. They never let me go myself. Whenever I offered, my mother would say, "No, dear, you stay with Emma. Your father and I have nothing but time. Let us do this for our granddaughter." I had thought it was a beautiful act of love. Now, a horrific realization was staring me in the face. The next morning, while my husband stayed with Emma, I drove straight to the specialty pharmacy downtown. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. I walked up to the counter and asked to speak with the head pharmacist. "I need to check the records for Emma Patterson," I said, my voice shaking. "And I need to know exactly who has been picking up her prescriptions." The pharmacist, an older man named David, looked up the records. "Yes, Emma's oral chemo. It looks here like it was picked up 4 days ago by a Richard and Eleanor Vance. Her grandparents, correct?" "Yes," I breathed. "Did they ask any questions? Did anything seem strange?" David frowned, studying the computer screen. Then his face changed. He looked around before leaning closer to me across the counter. "Actually, Mrs. Patterson, now that you mention it, something very unusual happened during the last 2 refills. Your mother asked me an explicit question. She asked if this specific compound was safe for mammals of all sizes and what the weight-to-dosage ratio would be for a creature under 10 pounds. My blood ran completely cold. A creature under 10 pounds. A teacup poodle. "She told me she was just curious about the science," David whispered, looking genuinely concerned. "I told her absolutely not to alter any doses, and that this is human pediatric medication." I felt nauseous. "David, do you have security footage of the pickups?" "We do," he said, "but I can only release that to law enforcement. Is everything okay?" I couldn't even answer him. I ran out of the pharmacy, tears streaming down my face. I got into my car and drove straight to my parents' house. The anger inside me was burning so hot it felt like physical pain. I didn't knock. I burst through their front door. There, sitting in the living room, was my mother, Eleanor, and my sister, Caroline. Princess the poodle was sitting on Caroline's lap. On the coffee table sat a small plastic pill organizer, a set of tiny laboratory scales, and several empty clear gelatin capsules. Beside them was the blue and green pharmacy bag. Emma's pharmacy bag. "What are you doing?" I screamed, my voice echoing off the walls. My mother looked up, startled, but her expression quickly smoothed out into a mask of mild annoyance. "Calm down, Susan. You're making a scene." I marched over to the table and snatched the pharmacy bag. Inside was Emma's liquid chemotherapy bottle, but the seal was broken, and more than half the liquid was gone. It had been diluted with saline solution. They were watering down my dying daughter's medication. "You stole it," I choked out, the betrayal ripping through my chest. "You stole my daughter's chemotherapy. You've been diluting her medicine." Caroline didn't even look ashamed. She held Princess closer to her chest. "Princess needed it, Susan. The vet said her lymphoma is aggressive. The canine chemo costs $5,000 a month. We couldn't afford it." I looked at my own mother, expecting her to express horror, expecting her to defend her granddaughter. Instead, my mother looked at me coldly. "Princess has lymphoma too, Susan. Don't be selfish. Emma is getting most of it. We just took a portion to save Princess. We are trying to save both of them. Emma is your granddaughter." I screamed, the tears blinding me. She is a human being. She is 7 years old, and she is fighting for her life. How could you take her medicine and give it to a dog? My mother stood up, drawing herself to her full height, her face completely devoid of emotion. Princess has been in this family longer, she said flatly. I froze. The room went completely silent except for the faint panting of the dog. Princess has been in this family longer. Those words burned themselves into my brain. My mother had just weighed the life of my 7-year-old daughter against a poodle, and the dog had won. Before I could say another word, my phone rang. It was the hospital. Mrs. Patterson, you need to come to the pediatric intensive care unit immediately, the nurse said, her voice urgent. Emma's oxygen levels have plummeted. She's slipped into a coma. I dropped the pharmacy bag, turned around, and sprinted out of the house, leaving my mother and sister standing there with their stolen drugs. The next 48 hours were a blur of absolute agony. I sat by Emma's bedside in the intensive care unit. The machines beeped rhythmically, a cruel reminder of how fragile her life was. She looked so tiny beneath the heavy hospital blankets. Her favorite unicorn hat sat on the bedside table. The doctors did everything they could. They pumped her with the correct, full doses of chemotherapy. They put her on a ventilator. They fought for her with every ounce of medical knowledge they possessed. But her body was already too weak. The weeks of receiving diluted medication had allowed the leukemia to take over, ravaging her system beyond repair. There was no grand, dramatic movie moment. It was just a quiet, devastatingly still hospital room. On a rainy Tuesday morning, the doctor gently placed his hand on my shoulder and shook his head. I climbed into the hospital bed, pulled my beautiful, hairless little girl into my arms, and held her tight. You can go to Disney now, sweetie, I whispered into her ear, my heart breaking completely. You don't have to be brave anymore. A few minutes later, the line on the monitor went flat. Emma was gone. The grief was a crushing weight that threatened to suffocate me. But beneath that grief, a cold, hard diamond of pure rage formed. My parents and my sister thought they had gotten away with it. They didn't even come to the funeral. Caroline text messaged me saying they couldn't attend because Princess was having a bad reaction to her treatment and couldn't be left alone. They thought it was over, but I was just getting started. The day after Emma's funeral, I walked into the police precinct. I didn't bring tears. I brought evidence. I handed the police Emma's medical records, the pharmacy audit showing the diluted medication, the text message from Caroline showing the pharmacy bag in the background, and the contact information for David, the pharmacist. The police launched an immediate, massive investigation. Because it involved specialized, regulated oncology drugs, federal agencies got involved. They executed a search warrant on my parents' home and Caroline's apartment. What they found was a mountain of undeniable evidence. They found the veterinary records where Caroline had written down a log of the human chemotherapy doses she was administering to the dog. They recovered deleted text messages between my mother and sister, detailing exactly how they would intercept Emma's medication, extract a portion using syringes, refill the bottle with saline, and reseal it using a heat gun tool they bought online. They discovered financial records proving my parents had financed the entire operation to save Caroline the expense of vet bills. They were charged with prescription diversion, grand theft, insurance fraud, forgery, and eventually, involuntary manslaughter. The trial took place 6 months later. My parents and sister sat at the defense table, looking pale and pathetic. The high society friends who used to attend Caroline's dog birthday parties completely abandoned them. They were publicly humiliated, their names dragged through the local news. During the trial, their defense attorney tried to argue a desperate angle. He claimed they were victims of a tragic misunderstanding, that they were simply trying to save both lives in a moment of emotional panic. The prosecutor destroyed the defense piece by piece. He projected the deleted text messages on a giant screen for the jury to see. One text from my mother read, "Susan is too stupid to notice the bottle is a little watery. Just make sure Princess gets her dose before the weekend." The jury was visibly horrified. Some of them were wiping away tears. Others were staring at my family with pure disgust. It took the jury less than 2 hours to return a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge didn't show an ounce of mercy. My sister Caroline was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. My mother and father were sentenced to 12 years each. Because of the massive legal fees and the restitution fines ordered by the court, my parents had to sell their house, completely bankrupting themselves. They lost their freedom, their money, and their dignity. Yesterday, I drove out to the quiet, grassy cemetery where Emma is buried. The sun was shining, and the wind was blowing gently through the trees. I walked up to her small headstone, which has a beautiful engraving of a castle on it. I knelt down and placed her favorite yellow unicorn hat on top of the stone. "Justice is done, my sweet girl," I whispered, touching the cool marble. My mother had sent me a letter from prison last week, begging for forgiveness, asking me to visit them, crying that blood is thicker than water. I tore it up and threw it in the trash. I looked at Emma's grave one last time. "You chose a dog over your granddaughter," I said aloud, speaking to the memory of my family. The court chose justice over blood. I turned around and walked away into the quiet afternoon. I will never forgive them. I will never reconcile with them. There is no peace in my heart, but there is justice. And for Emma, that is exactly what I promised.